welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I'm your dirty chicken on the floor host, Madelyn.
I'm your feather from a mystical creature host, Emma.
And thank you for tuning in to this week's show. This week, it's time to be healed. Listener, it's a healing episode about health items in games. Which is my pick, my side quest pick.
Mm-hmm.
No particular, it's cold and flu season.
Yeah.
So, time to talk about health.
Yeah, remember our DLC episode. You've got to go download it into your body now. Your flu vaccine.
Yep, go download that flu vaccine annual DLC, new season pass.
In fact, if you haven't done it by now, you're kind of late. And you should really do it.
Yeah, it's probably on sale for free.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah. Thinking of like nothing in particular like super inspired this for me. I was just sort of like, what are things in games that might spark conversation? But yeah, I mean, other than obviously cold and flu season. Obviously, duh.
Right.
We have done a side quest on food in games before, and so I'm going to endeavor to not just talk about food. But, like, a lot of health items are food, so I think it's gonna come up to some capacity.
Sure, of course.
But Emma, do you have any favorite health items in games?
Oh, man. I was remembering, because I was looking a little bit, like, people talking about, like, what do potions even taste like, And I remembered that the ones in the Tales of series are called gels and like are little gummies, essentially.
Funny.
And they're explicitly like fruit flavored, like they're different flavors of fruit. And also apparently you can also just eat them on things if you want to. So I enjoy that they literally made like little fruit gummies, essentially. And that's the
gushers,
healing items.
Health gushers.
Yeah.
Feels like if we could get, real medicine in gusher form, that might help.
Help what?
Just like world health.
World health. I'm not actually a big gusher person, so maybe that would be bad for me.
For you, I mean, obviously we would have normal medicine too, but I feel like if we could have like a fruit gels kind of situation, gummies. I realize that children's medicine is often that way, but why isn't all medicine a vitamin gummy?
You're right.
It is entails
a world of apple gels, please.
A world of apple gels, my kingdom for an apple gel. You'd think, oh, an obvious favorite. Well, I guess we have had a potion. We did order a potion at the Square Enix Cafe.
You're right. I don't remember what it was, though.
I don't either. It was not that memorable. I don't remember it tasting like medicine. Wouldn't that be funny if they were like, haha, it tastes like NyQuil?
That would be funny.
Probably not good for business.
No.
I do like the med kits from The Last of Us. Those bring mirth to me.
Yeah, the fact that you get injured on the same place in the same arm every single time.
That too. But, and I say this with the, look, I'm not very good at The Last of Us, and I did use a lot of med kits, right? So, no hate to the process, although I'm sure we'll talk about the process of healing items quite a bit. But I just enjoy the, yes, I've picked up this random bottle of half-opened ancient tequila and a dirty rag, and now my bullet wound, fine.
Yeah.
And look, I know that's at the heart of all video game healing, right? But The Last of Us in particular, it's oh no, I kind of buy the Molotov, I kind of buy the Shiv, right? Those are things where it's yeah, I picked up those random things and I made it. The health kit though is oh, I poured ancient spiced rum on this zombie bite and I dabbed at it with a towel and I'm fine.
Well, it's not the zombie bite, to be fair.
You're
it's
right.
Not, they aren't that powerful.
You're right. I don't know. Ancient Captain Morgan? Who could say, really?
Who could say?
There are a lot of things. There are some things in games that I don't really even think of as healing items, though. Did you think of the mushrooms in Mario as a healing item?
I guess.
right? I don't know. I feel like there's a distinction in my mind between like power up and health item, even though some power ups are health items. Like I just don't think of the standard. It gives you another life. Of course, it's a health item, but
Yeah. Well, there is something different about. I mean, I guess when you boil it down, it's sort of fundamentally the same thing, but it feels a little different to have like 3 lives versus like an amount of health bar, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely lives are definitely a more rudimentary health system in general. But I thought it was interesting that the Mario mushrooms were on like all of these lists of like health items in gaming. And it's like, I don't know that I would have talked about that at all had I not seen this on this list. Because Mario doesn't like that. I mean, there's a question there too of like, what does Mario do with that mushroom?
It's like he's like it's like, you know, those mushrooms that Vikings ate, right?
Clarify.
Like in not probably not really, but like the mushrooms, like the berserker mushrooms.
Oh, sure. That makes sense. I'm just wondering if it's more of a like he rubs it on his face kind of situation.
He rubs it on his face? The whole mushroom?
I don't know. Is he just like eating a raw mushroom? I don't have
Yeah. And then he rips his shirt off and goes crazy.
I also feel that way when I eat a good mushroom, but like, you know, it's my talkie.
Uh-huh.
So health items are funny, right? Because they're, I think, one of the, or rather, a prominent vestige of an era of gaming that was not as concerned with realism. While also being like a core part of almost any game, particularly in certain genres. And it's sort of like fascinating, like kind of along with like the double jump. Although I feel like the double jump is in some ways on its way out of trend, right?
Well, I mean, in realistic games, a lot of the times you can't jump. You're not allowed to jump.
Yes.
So, you know.
That's realistic.
But the double jump
in my life.
The double jump has never been in those sorts of games, so I don't know if it's really on its way out. It's still in the same genres that it's always been in.
That's fair. That's fair enough. I just mean to say that they're one of those things that it's like, that's a really gamey thing that it's hard to imagine games without. Well, at the same time, the moment you think about what's going on with health items in like any capacity in almost any game for more than half a second, it's like, oh, I eat box. I feel better.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of the compromise of like, you know, it unless you're making a really specific type of game, it's not fun to get clipped with a stray bullet and die. Right?
Yeah.
Or continue to have to deal with that in some way. So, you know, you have to make it so that your character can take a couple of hits. Right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, but then you have to figure out some way of, like, showing those hits, and then you have to figure out some sort of way of recovering from those hits.
Yeah.
So you don't have, like, a number of hits for the whole game.
Yeah.
And so, in order to make it fun, you do have to sacrifice that little bit of realism that you might want, even in the most, like, even in your Red Dead Redemption 2s, right?
Yep. I did in, what is this series called? This is a YouTube video from the Escapist magazine.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of zero punctuation most of the time, but I like this video was interesting.
Yeah. I liked his suggestion of a luck meter.
Yeah.
I was like, that's a pretty decent workaround. This like, oh, the bullet missed, lucky you.
Yeah.
Kind of thing until then you're dead. Doesn't really resolve the issue, but I was like, that's a funny way to get around some of it. While still maintain, like, to get around the like, oh, you got shot and you healed it by eating a burger element of the unrealism, at least. I thought was interesting. Obviously, then there would be the question of like, are you eating a burger and you get lucky again? But you know, but it's It is interesting to me how little variation there is in how healing items are implemented. I feel like most systems in games, you know, you see a variety of systems, and the health items, there are some exceptions that we will talk about, but are almost invariably just like, you eat the item, you heal.
Yeah. Or eat in the sense of it goes away. Whatever
Consume the
they
item.
happen to be
but like
doing
a lot
with
of the time
it.
it is you eat it though.
Or drink it, I guess.
Fair enough. Eat or drink it. And even when you don't eat or drink it, you have the sense of eating or drinking. Like, maybe you are eating or drinking it, you know? It's unclear. There's certainly no mechanical element of, like, you must... I mean, The Last of Us is, I guess, a slightly different example of this. Of, like, okay, in that one you at least have to hold down the button while Joel bandages his arm for the 70th time.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a little bit slightly more advanced. But almost everything is like, well, yeah, you might as... I mean, just like in that silly video with the potion guys, where they're like, oh, what do I do with my vial now that I've drunk the potion? And he's like, what are you talking about? Like, you eat it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the one fundamental, I think, like, design choice when it comes to things that you consume is whether or not it takes time to consume them or not, right? So, like, The Last of Us is one example of, like, you have to spend some time to get that health back, right?
Yeah.
So you have to pick an opportune time in whatever combat situation that you're in order to actually go through the bandaging act.
Yeah.
Or in Dark Souls, you have to, like, actually step back from the boss so that your character can take a little sippy.
I love that, by the way. I love the energy of it. Like, because, like, Dark Souls could just as easily have been, like, you have 8 potions, right?
Yeah.
Mechanically, more or less the same. But just the idea of taking a little, like, shot of potion is very good.
Yeah, he's just gotta take a little couple of gulps.
Yeah.
But there's an animation. It takes some time to actually do that. Even something like Final Fantasy VII Remake, you can get interrupted using your potion if you're not using it at an opportune time. That one's funny because the animation for, like, I think it's a little bit shorter when you're in combat. When you're out of combat, the implication is, like, you break it above your head, and then it just sort of, like, infuses Cloud with, like, an aura.
Yeah.
Or whatever. So I don't know what's going on with the potions in that game, but they're weird.
It's like materia stuff, right?
Sure. Sure.
I'll accept that there. I do love an alternate healing method. Even if we don't ever see it, even if it's just, like, you should think about it a little bit, it's... Yeah, like, you're dumping the potion on your head. Sick.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Wish there was more medicine like that in the real world, too. More gushers, more just, like, absolutely pour some Dayquil on me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah. Scientists, get on it. You can also, in some games, like, I don't ever do this in Baldur's Gate because... I just don't. But you can technically chuck a potion of some sort at one of your other party members. Like, you can just throw it at them and it heals them. So I assume you just chuck, like, a whole flask at their head.
No.
And it breaks.
Definitely in Baldur's Gate, it's more like we've used the bladder of a deer, like a water balloon kind of thing.
No, they're like, the image is like little flasks.
No. I don't believe that. Better if it's a water balloon situation.
Maybe they're like water balloons. Yeah, sure. Why not? You also help when they're down and doing their death saving throws. If you go over and help them, you just give them, like, a little pat on the butt so they get up, which I thought very fits in with the rest of the game's tone.
Yeah. Like, party revival things are a whole other can of worms. I think there's so many. Party revival things are another thing that it's like, okay, like, I guess we just accept that.
Yeah.
Kind of energy.
I mean, a lot of them, I feel like, are just, like, you have to go over and, like, help up your friend because they've fallen over and are feeling concussed or whatever.
Like, hey, buddy. River City Girls is, like, you stomp on their face until they get up.
That's good.
It's very hard, actually. My boyfriend and I got kind of grumpy at each other sometimes, by which I mean I would get grumpy at him.
Yeah.
He was like pressing the button, but his character was attacking someone instead. Be like, no, save me.
I do like to think with like Phoenix Downs that they like shove the like pointy end of the feather into like their chest, like a adrenaline shot. Yeah. And that's like wakes them up, you know. Could also be like smelling salts, like you put it under their nose, so it's like tickling, but it also smells good, and that's how you get them to wake up. Many possibilities.
The nose tickle, now that you said the nose tickle like that and compared it to smelling salts, I think that's it.
That's it, that's the one.
That makes sense to me, yeah.
Yeah.
Because, like, smelling salts, you, like, breathe in the kind of Phoenix energy, absolutely.
Yeah. Once you're, like, we've talked a lot about, like, you know, like, potions and items and stuff, and all of those, like, even the more, like, realistic ones, there aren't really realistic games, you know, though?
Yeah.
So they don't really have to worry too much about, like, the magic potion that Cloud breaks above his head.
Yeah.
Because, like, yeah, sure, that's how it works.
Yeah, the vial magically disappears afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah. He sits on a bench and he feels better.
Been there. But, like, obviously health items are part of games that are much more realistic, too. I mean, any kind of Call of Duty-like is often going to have health items.
Yeah.
And, you know, those do pretty much just operate like magic potions. There are some exceptions to that. I did like the, like, in at least one of the Metal Gear Solids, you have, like, different items for different types of injuries, which I thought was neat. If I'm sure it would be, like, annoying in practice, probably. But I thought that was neat.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Absolutely.
I do think those are, like, depending on what it is, it's really funny. Like, Cold Steel 4, and I'm sure other games have this too, but in addition to having, like, a status restorement, like, cure-all thing for any type of status restorement, they also have specific items for specific status ailments that you can use. Mm-hmm. So there's just something really comedic about being like, hang on, like, I gotta put eye drops in. Mm-hmm. Can you cover me for a second?
Yeah, cover me. My eyes are dry.
Like, in the middle of battle. I feel like games should maybe lean into that more. I wish that in Cold Steel 4 there was an animation of them having to, like, lean their head back. Like, especially as someone who has a violent reaction to eye drops, usually. Yeah. I think that would be very funny and good. Yeah. To have to be like, yeah, I'm putting in my eye drops. Hang on a second, hold on.
I've enjoyed the discourse around the Starfield sandwiches.
Yeah.
I won't talk about food too much. Go back and listen to our Food and Games podcast. But yeah, Starfield evidently, in like very much the Skyrim tradition here, has like all these food items everywhere, including like really beautiful, delicious looking sandwiches that restore like 2 points of health. And so everyone's grumpy. They're like, what's the point of all this food? It doesn't restore any health. Which I just think is really, like, on one hand, that's kind of much more realistic, right? Like, yeah, okay, I eat a sandwich and, like, I feel a little bit less grumpy or whatever. But it's not going to help me if I've, like, broken 3 of my fingers.
Yeah.
But games have trained us so consistently that if there's food bouncing around, all the way back to Pac-Man, right? If there's food bouncing around, it's good. I guess the Pac-Man food isn't really a healing item, but whatever. Bear with me. And so, like, it's just funny to watch people be like, wait a minute, though. The sandwiches should heal me.
I think the problem with games like Starfield and I guess Baldur's Gate 3 too is they have carry limits, like, on what you can have in your inventory.
Right.
So, like, I really don't I don't like this system of inventory limiting because it hasn't encouraged me to, like, get rid of stuff. Instead, I'm just, like, drowning in total nonsense because there's way too much stuff for me to go through. Yeah. In Baldur's Gate 3, and I imagine it's a little bit like this in Starfield too. So I can see how, like, being like, why do I have 20 sandwiches that do nothing? Do I just drop them on the ground and leave? in Starfield would be a little bit annoying if they don't have any sort of utility.
It's like that in Skyrim, too. I mean, constantly when I was playing Skyrim, I would be like, uh-oh, I have too much to carry and now I'm walking really slow.
Yeah.
Let me, like, take my potion that allows me to carry more just so I can fast travel to a town, and then I will walk at glacial pace to the store. And yeah, you better believe if I had somehow accidentally picked up a wheel of cheese that I would be throwing it away, because it does not heal anything. Overall, though, I do think, like, I don't know that sort of inventory management system is my jam. I think it is a good adaptation and often helpful adaptation overall to be thinking about how is your player managing their inventory of health items specifically, and how are you incentivizing or not incentivizing them to use them.
Yeah.
Because, of course, that's the big meme, right? That's one of the biggest memes of video game memes is, uh-oh, I got to the boss, and a final boss, I never used my, like, fancy full restore that gives me triple power because I have to keep saving it for when I really need it.
For being such like an understood like situation though, I do think that that's something that mostly happens in longer games and in like RPGs specifically. Cuz like thinking of like, I mean, there are certain ways that games like The Last of Us only lets you carry a certain amount of each resource at a time. So you can only have like 3 health kits at a time, and also you can only have so much of the stuff, the rags and the alcohol to make the health kits at a time. So that does encourage you to like at least be using one to top yourself off every once in a while so that you can continue like picking things up and not like feeling like you're wasting supplies because you're too full up because you've been too conservative with it.
Yep.
And something like Resident Evil doesn't limit you on health items, but it does have like, you just have your briefcase, and that's as much space as you have for anything you're carrying.
Yeah.
So you have to be managing like what you're carrying in the first place, which of course includes health items. It also has a little bit, like Leon's, when I played Resident Evil 4, Leon was always dying, so I was just having to use them, even if I wanted to save them.
Yeah.
But they also have ones you can find, you know, there's green, red, and yellow herbs in Resident Evil 4, which, deeply funny. Mm-hmm. What are you doing with those, Leon? Smoking them?
Chewing on them.
Chewing on them? That makes sense.
Maybe he brews tea?
You know, when you combine them together, they go in like a little flask with like the little bitties.
A green juice.
But they're not like juice, they're like minced.
A chimichurri.
But the yellow herbs, which are a little rarer, do, when you use them, they increase your maximum health. But you can't use a yellow herb or a red herb by themselves. You have to either combine them with green herbs or with each other before that you can use them. So that does encourage you to be like, yeah, I'll mix up my green herb, and then I can use all 3 of these at the same time for the most benefit and also for the least space in my inventory.
Well, I think exactly that tying consumable items to permanent buffs is sort of the solution du jour right now of how do we get players to actually use these items. It's such a fascinating thing anyway, isn't it? Right? Isn't it so interesting that item hoarding is such a universal thing?
I mean, again, I think it comes like if you were playing like a 50-hour game and you're in hour 10 and you're like, do I really need these potions now? What if they stop giving me potions down the line? You know, what if they're like, you know, it's hard now. There's no more potions, and I didn't save any of them. Yeah. And that's how you end up going into the final boss fight with a gajillion billion items sitting in your inventory. And that's not just the case for like healing items. That's like if you have like attack items or anything like that, like you're not using those either.
Yeah. To be fair, I am this way in real life too.
Yeah.
I am. Like my tea collection, right? I'm like, oh, like it's not a special enough occasion to drink this one, kind of thing.
That's fair.
Or whenever I get like fancy candy from a person, right? Fancy chocolate. this is embarrassing, but only recently did I throw out, I think I had like a Kit Kat or something that was left from Japan when we went in 2019.
You probably should not eat that.
I did throw it out, but it had been in the fridge the whole time.
Still.
But that's what I mean. Like, I am an item hoarder like that in real life, too, in pretty much the exact same way as I am in games. But, like, I couldn't, like, why? I don't know. Why? What's wrong with me psychologically? That's how
What if you need them? What if you need that candy?
What if I do?
What do you need that Kit Kat to heal you for 2 HP?
What if I do? But it is interesting to think about, you know, like, yeah, what is it that drives a player? How do you make it fun to use an item, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, oh no, the opportunity cost. Because that's just something that's such a common thing to grapple with, and it seems like, I don't know, with the exception of games like Dark Souls, where you just, like, literally don't have a choice. And also in Dark Souls, where your item is not, like, consumable in a gone forever way.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? Yeah, how do you make it like I have a Dark Souls flask and I can refill it, or like I have a Pokemon Center I can go to, and or whatever. Or is it the, you know, you get a permanent buff, or is there some kind of other fun way to make people use things? It's tricky.
In general, I think the most effective on me is like you can only carry so many of these at a time.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, well, then I have to use them so that I can continue picking them up, you know? But that does create, like, you know, maybe because you'd have to be aware that your player only has, like, 10 of these at any one time, right? And you have to be designing your game to be like, okay, the player only has 10 of these. Like, where are they using them? How does that affect, like, how they go against, like, bosses? Like, how should I be doing things, you know? Another thing that's, like, sort of becoming something that people try is just, like, healing after every battle. Mm-hmm. Chained Echoes, which I played this year, I think. Just, like, healed you after every battle, and that makes, like, you know, it's battle progression fundamentally different from something that doesn't heal you after every battle.
Yep.
Right. Like, each battle is a little bit more intensive versus, like, a wear down over time that, like, a Persona game might be.
I don't know that I love that solution. I mean, I think for certain game types, it's a solution.
I mean, it's certainly not an overall solution because it's just it's a fundamentally different design choice, right? Like, I saw some discussions that's like, you couldn't do this in Persona, and one of the replies was like,
no,
yeah, because then it would be a different game. Yes.
And that's exactly what I mean, is that there is definitely games where, like, the joy is in, or the strategy is in, like, how do I manage my health over time?
Yeah.
I do have to say, in regards to your preference for the, like, I can only have so many of these, I mean, there's a realism to that, right? But also, and this is a little bit of probably what sparked this episode, is playing Lost Judgment. It has, you know, institutes a limit on how many of each item you can have. For a while, Yakuza games had, like, you have this many item slots kind of thing in your inventory, and you can only carry, like, 20 total items or whatever. But in the more recent games, it's more like, you can only carry 3 Tauriners, you can only carry 3 Tough Disease, right? The problem there, though, I think that those are, like, relatively fair things. The problem there is that there are so many items that I'm like, I don't need to use a Staminan. I'm just gonna eat everything I bought from Ichiban Senbei, you know?
Yeah.
That's fine. I can swim back around there and refill that whenever I get there. If I finish that, I've got 10 bentos that I bought from the convenience store.
Honestly, the bentos are better than the
more
medicine.
Cost effective.
More cost effective, yeah.
So you also have to be monitoring, okay, if you're doing that, how do you make sure that you don't have so many item types so as to trivialize that limit that you've put on? And that's why I actually sort of, I think it was in many ways more, like, annoying, but I think I do prefer the, like, for this particular series anyway, the way they've implemented these two things, I think I prefer the, like, you have this many total slots energy. Because I do feel like, I mean, look, the incentive in Like a Dragon and Judgment is, but I want to be able to go to the restaurant and eat a bunch of things so I can get my points. Right? Yeah. And so I don't want to heal because I want to be able to go around the corner and feed my dude like 7, I don't know, like hamburgers because I'm all the way down at low health and I managed to not use a healing item. But when you do heal, there's no, like, you know, you get to go into the pause menu, you can heal in the middle of being punched the heck out of you. There's no real strategy to it. It's just cheesy.
I did think in the original Judgment, they didn't end up sticking with this, I think because it was unpopular, but in the original Judgment, he had, like, a fatal wounds system.
Oh, yeah.
Where, like, certain attacks, if you got hit by them, would take a chunk off Yagami's health bar.
Yeah.
And it would stay off until either you went to, like, the special underground doctor or used one of his special, like, med kits that are, like, specialized for, like, oh, I've been stabbed versus, like, I've just been, like, punched in the shoulder, you know, which maybe I just eat some food for that.
Yeah.
Versus, like, my liver has ruptured. I need to go to the underground doctor for that, which is like an interesting way. I thought that was interesting, although I don't think they implemented it perfectly. But I wish they'd maybe tried something else with it as opposed to just giving up on it like they did in Lost Judgment. Because the idea for that was, like, Yagami is not human monster Kiryu Kazuma.
Right.
That he's a little bit more fragile and, like, a normal man who just knows kung fu.
Yeah.
And they ended up sort of getting rid of that going forward.
And to be fair, I think he operates less as normal man in Lost Judgment as well.
Yeah.
So, like, in that way, it's somewhat appropriate. Like, he's a skateboarder and a biker and a choreographer and. So maybe he no longer gets fatal wounds because he's evolved past that point.
Yeah.
But I think the problem in that game was just that the doctor was too hard to get to. Which is realistic probably in and of itself, but it was just like, like, I've got these fatal wounds. Like, I'm just gonna have to run all the way up to the top corner of the map and go down the stairs to go see the doctor. I'm like, no, I don't want to do that. And I'm hoarding my first aid kits for when I really need them, so I'm not going to use them.
Fair enough. But that is one sort of method that you could try, being like, you know, in a real fight, you get punched that many times, you're probably not doing well, but, like, in video game mind, you're like, oh, I just got punched a few times, like, yeah, I'll get over it.
Yeah.
Versus, like, trying to add some sort of realism to, like, being stabbed or shot or something.
Yeah.
Of being like, oh, you have to actually get some medical care for that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's sort of hindered by the fact that Yagami can still run around fine, even if most of his health bar is gone.
The games there are some of the games where when Kiryu is injured, he kind of, like, limps. Like, when you're really low health, he walks a little different.
Yeah.
But it doesn't affect your fighting. It's a missed opportunity. I'll stop talking about RDG, but it's a missed opportunity to have not done that with the school nurse, I have to say.
What do you mean?
Like, instead of the underground doctor,
to
like,
heal.
he has to go to the nurse's office.
Just that would be very funny.
Yeah. Just saying. Missed opportunity.
You're right. Could have put a club in there. Incentivize getting stabbed.
Pre-med. The pre-med club. Anyway.
Free ideas.
I read a fair bit of, like, Reddit discourse of, like, are health potions just bad game design, right? Or are they just band-aids for bad game design, right? And, like, how do you make the decision of should my character in my game have just 300 hit points, or should they have 100 hit points and 4 slots for, 50 hit point potions, right? And those are sort of functionally the same, but feel very different, and both can be successful, right? But how do you want your player to kind of feel about their experience of the game? Which was interesting to me. I mean, health potions are definitely a like easy to implement difficulty modifier. Which I can see why that sometimes engenders the like, wah, it's bad game design, like just make the game better. But I do think from that perspective, yeah, they like add something important in that they widen, and not just in a like they make it easier way, but they just widen people's experience of the difficulty of that moment.
Yeah. I mean, depending on the type of game, too, like having 300 hit points versus having 100 and 450 item healers is also different, right? If it's turn-based and you can use items during gameplay, like that's a fundamentally different experience than just 300 hit points, right? Because you are sacrificing something, an action in order to use your health potion.
Yeah.
So you have to think about when you're using it as well to sort of manage your health in that way.
I was surprised that you pushed back against the health potions are red consensus.
They aren't always red.
I feel like most of the time they are red.
I think I thought more about it, and I think it probably depends on whether the game has your health bar that is red or if your health bar is green.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think those are both relatively common choices. But I am thinking of like explicitly Kingdom Hearts, where all items are green.
Like that's true. Yeah, you're right.
It's not even split by like the ether isn't blue, even though your MP is.
Mm-hmm.
Like all the items are green colored, both in menu and like in whatever icon they're showing you.
That's true.
What the potion looks like. So there are definitely some that are like potions are green. Again, also in Final Fantasy VII, which is probably mostly because the live stream is green.
Yeah.
But yeah, they are red a lot of times.
But magic is always blue. I mean, I know you just said that ethers are not blue, but like magic has to be blue.
See, I don't even know if that's always true. It's definitely almost always blue.
I do wonder, like, this would be a, nobody has the time or the money to do this, but like fun playtest experiment of like, what would even happen to players if you gave them like a color swapped potion situation? Would they even be able to do it?
Yeah, if you made the health bar blue and the magic bar red.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just one of those things that we've decided on, You certainly wouldn't try to make the magic bar red, I think,
Like, I guess.
Or the health bar blue.
The
health bar blue feels more like, no, you wouldn't do that. Although maybe in fighting games, I guess they sort of go, some of them go from like blue to orange, don't they?
I don't know.
Am I thinking of that right?
I'm not
sure.
I don't know. But yeah, like, it's just a funny thing. And the way it then like bleeds over. It's the same thing as the like, we see food, we expect it to heal us thing. It's fascinating how all of these things that can have nothing to do with genre or nothing to do with anything just kind of like filter in, because like that's how it has to be.
Well, there is for something like color of information, like you have to just be building like a shared literacy, so that when someone who has played games before or hasn't played games before goes into your game, they're both able to understand it. There's like some like playtest talking about playtests over like the like yellow ladders in Resident Evil on Twitter like a few weeks ago, like a month ago or something. Now. But I thought some of it was interesting. It's like sometimes you do something and people who play more games actually struggle with it because you're breaking like a fundamental rule of how it works. Like when platformers, like you go from left to right in platformers, right? And sometimes when you like are like, oh, but now you're going the other way, like people who play more games get stuck and confused. Versus when you're playtesting it with people who don't play very many games, they're like, oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Why not? Because they don't have that shared, like, literacy yet of, like, game design rules that have been agreed upon.
Yep.
And I think that's the sometimes the case with, like, you know, health potion and magic potion colors, too.
Yeah.
Is, like, we just have decided upon that so that gamers can come in and they know what, you don't have to explain that, really. Yeah. They understand.
So, if you're trying to make a game that's trying to attract new people to games, blue health bar, all the way. The gamers won't play it. They won't play it. Am I reading our notes that you have a favorite type of item?
I do?
Yeah. The drama, the revival of it all.
Oh yeah, I like, I think there are definitely people who don't like death-saving items. Like, that you have equipped and you get, like, a second chance. Mm-hmm. But I like them. I think they're fun. They give you the big, like, dopamine burst when they kick in. Because you forget that you have them. I'm thinking of when I beat Cyax when you were visiting me for, like, PAX in Kingdom Hearts Remind. Kingdom Hearts Remind. And we were really close to the end. And then I got killed and I didn't remember. But I still had the Kupo coin.
What?
And then we won. Yeah. This happens in Cold Steel 4 all the time, too. I forget Reen has, like, a special accessory equipped that reses him upon death. Mm-hmm. And then every time he dies and he comes back, I go, let's go!
Go Reen!
And those are really good, too, because they restore, like, all of your meters. So if he was really low on CP, maybe I should just let him die once. And then it'll all come back.
Yeah, I've started to abuse this, or I did start to abuse this. It's November, so I have finished Triangle Strategy.
We'll see.
What do you mean we'll see? Go back and listen to the 6-week side quest.
Oh, yeah.
Where I talked about finishing
Definitely. It. Yeah.
Go back and listen to it, Emma. Roll the
Of course.
tape.
Yeah.
But there's like one item that's like, oh, when the character dies, they revive. And I did not ever forget that I had that on. I was like, who cares? Like, absolutely. Murder. I can't remember any of their names. Like the little mage boy. The mage boy.
Murder the little mage boy. Yeah.
I was like, yeah, kill him. Whatever. Like, what do I care? Kill him. Go ahead. I was like sending him forward to like bait attacks from other things. Because I was like, whatever. He's got the resurrection item. Odd. But okay, so, I mean, here. You know how in Zelda that item is like a fairy in a jar?
Yeah.
What happens to the fairy?
I feel like in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, you see the fairy like leave.
Uh-huh.
So maybe it's like their relief at being freed heals you, or like you
sweet.
You offer them their freedom. I mean, it's sweet until you think that like Link is keeping them captive for the chance that he dies.
It's better than like the alternative of like, well, they can do that once and they're dead, or Link eats them. But but you're right. It does not. It does reframe the keeping them captured in the jar. Although there's probably no way to reframe that where it's
great.
Yeah. Like, not much you can do.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they like leave. There's like a little fairy animation where they peace out when you die in the two new ones. I imagine if you're just like using it, it's in like one of the GBA ones or whatever. It's maybe a little bit more ambiguous what happens to the fairy.
Just one of those things that maybe we don't want to know.
Yep.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about that as a health item for a while, and then I read it in something, and I was like, oh. And of course, no episode about healing items would be complete without talking about Remy the Rat.
Those aren't even healing items. I don't know what that article was talking about. Those are stat boosts.
Maybe some of them have a little bit of healing, but I feel like if they'd had healing associated with them, I might have actually used them.
You can't use them during battle.
Oh.
Pretty sure you use them beforehand. And then there's like a timer on them.
Well, clearly the gamer just misunderstood that any food item has to be a healing item.
when there is cooking or some sort of like where you can have meals, it usually is like they have some sort of stat boost or multiple different effects at the same time as they're healing you.
Yeah.
So in some cases you might have something like potions or bombs or whatever that you can just buy and use as healing items. And then if you're doing cooking, those like heal both your health and magic or boost your stats temporarily or, you know.
Yeah.
In Cold Steel, there's some that's like kills you.
Dead.
Poisons. So positive and negative effects, I guess.
Yeah. Well, let me throw out there some other, like, healing systems that I thought were neat that I encountered in researching this episode. So the Dark Souls one is good, right? You know, not everybody feels that way. People have weird feelings about Dark Souls, right?
Sure.
But I think
we have some weird feelings about Dark Souls sometimes. You know?
That's fine. That's what I mean. Everybody has some kind of weird feeling some way or another about Dark Souls. But I think to, like, take a little sippy, feels good both from the, like, haha, little sip perspective and also the, like, strategy of it all.
I wish they did put it in, like, a little sippy cup, though.
Well, if you were smart is, you know, the Dark Souls world, you would just, like, have, like a long one of those long swirly straws.
Yeah.
That you just kind of kept in your mouth.
Like a hydration backpack that you put on.
Exactly. Because, like, obviously the danger in that world is, oops, didn't leave myself enough time to finish up my sip. Now I'm dead. So why wouldn't you have a straw?
The Estus, by the way, apparently is, like, bottled fire. So
maybe that's why you don't have a straw.
Yeah, it would melt the straw, probably.
Or, like, if you were taking tiny sips constantly, you would die.
Maybe.
I guess if you were just, like, tiny sipping, like, very strong alcohol, right? That's what I'm thinking of here the whole time. Like, that would probably that might negatively impact your fighting. Yeah. Even minus the alcohol of it all, just the, like, burn of it. I also liked, I think, having not played these, really, I can't really speak to how it actually works, but the idea of the max pain and, like, him, like, chugging painkillers felt, like, thematically appropriate and slightly acknowledged in the taking of them. I also liked, I don't think that these operate in a way that's different than, I mean, that's true of all of these. They don't really operate differently than, like, normal healing items. But, like, the nano machines in Metal Gear, I was like, that's cool. I actually believe that little machines in your blood could probably heal a bullet wound.
Son?
Nano machines, son. So I thought that was cool. Mm-hmm. Look, I love a floor chicken. Right?
Gotta love a floor chicken.
Gotta love a floor chicken. And now I really like the idea of Phoenix Down being like, you tickle their nose. Yeah. And they, like, wake up. That's, like, really, really funny. And I think it should be that. But yeah, would like some more silly healing animations and just healing items where the flavor text on them explains how they're used. Yeah.
That would be good. I don't need to know what it is. You just gotta tell me how someone goes about actually consuming them.
Yeah, and the sillier the better.
I like that in Rebirth, Cloud apparently needs little butt pillows in order to sit on benches.
Good.
Now.
Good.
This is pleasing to me.
That heals me. I'm healed by that.
That's the sort of silly stuff I want. You need some little butt pillows to sit on the hard benches.
We just want some levity here in cold and flu season. Just a little healing laugh. Laughter is really the best medicine.
That's what they say.
Can that be the title of the episode, Emma? Please.
Sure.
Please.
Sure. We'll see if I remember.
I'll write it all over the notes. Well, any final thoughts on health items?
I gotta go back to Japan and touch that Buddha's knee again.
I know. You need a Buddha heal. Full heal from the Buddha.
Yeah.
They're a fascinating little thing. They're a fascinating little thing that we're like, yes, that must be in almost every game. And I'll be interested to see how that evolves as we get more and more photorealistic and the gamers get more and more, wah, that's not real. Wah, I drove Spider-Man's bike into a train and then he T-posed. Wah. Kind of.
What do you mean? That's perfectly realistic. That's what Spider-Man would do. That's what he does in the movie, right?
That's what he does in the movie. No, it wasn't he was like biking and there was no bike there. Or something like that. But anyway, folks, what do you think a potion tastes like? Or a mana potion versus a healing potion versus a stamina potion? Do you prefer to imagine your heroes like sipping the potion daintily or just pouring it all over themselves, like smashing it above their head and letting it rain down? Do you feel that you are healed when you eat food? I think I've asked that question before. Or do you think a nice chimichurri be a nice healing experience for you? If you have thoughts on any of this or anything else we talked about this week, hit us up on social media. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You can also visit our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, check out the games in the hat, and read our blog featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend and Split Screen. But perhaps most importantly, you should subscribe. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Casts, wherever you can find podcasts. Subscribe to Talk This. We're not going to tell you what the games are next week.
You know what they are.
You can go back to last week and listen to what we said.
We've definitely picked the games. We're putting it on you.
Emma, our European vacation is going so great.
It is. I love being in Barcelona.
We are in Barcelona right now, aren't we?
Yeah.
The healing power
Hopefully.
of tapas. So yeah, you'll find out what it'll be Thanksgiving, right? It's like a Thanksgiving episode.
Yeah, the post-Thanksgiving one.
Yeah, Thanksgiving weekend. Post Black Friday.
Yes.
Pre-Giving Tuesday.
Yeah.
Talk This Sunday, as they call it.
That's what they call it. That's the official holiday.
So stay tuned for that. And go back and listen to last week if you want to know what we're talking about. Or read the blog if you want to know what we're going to be talking about. But that's it for this week's show. Listeners, I hope that... you don't have do you have a great one? Are you ready to go with one?
Nope.
Okay. I hope that this week your fairy in a jar is very comfortable and well taken care of. And if you let them out, it's just the joy of helping you for all of the care and support that you gave them while keeping them captive. It causes them to heal you and not the relief of freedom.